everyone, it's Dr. Tamara Beckford with Your Caring Docs. That's right, where we bring you health and wellness information. And especially for you ladies, we want you to put your self-care and health and wellness first, even if it's just for 2 hours a month. That's right, so important. But our podcast, so special. It's our Your Caring Docs, Docs Who Cares. That's where we get doctors from all over the world. They stop by here, leave health and wellness information, but most importantly, they're going to leave ways on how you can find them if you'd like to be a client of theirs or a patient. Today, I'm super excited because we are going into a super artistic realm. Yes, doctors are artists too. You need to know. Alrighty. So today I'm bringing in a superstar. I'm going to bring her in Your Caring Docs fashion, right? So this doctor is a graduate of the University of Illinois College of Medicine. She's also an Army veteran. Yeah, she did her training in general surgery in the Army. She's also a board certified surgeon, and she's the founder and CEO of Words of Hope Designs, right? That she creates hand-lettered art with messages of peace, truth, and hope. Welcome to our Your Caring Docs, Docs Who Cares podcast. This is Dr. Joanna Cranston.
Thank you.
Dr. Cranston, thank you so much for stopping by.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. All mine. Okay, so, we're talking about a general surgeon. We're talking about art. We're going hand in hand, if you will. Right? So, But before we get even deeper into all of this, I want to know, Dr. Cranston, what drew you into medicine? What is it that made you say, you know what? I want to give away blank amount of years of my life to medicine, right? Tell me, what drew you in?
Yeah, well, I think like many people who go into medicine, it sounds cliche, but I wanted to help people. And we are going to talk about my art business, and I will say that I have been a creative person my whole life. I'm the kid who wrote poetry, and I had my own comic strip when I was little. I learned how to juggle and ride a unicycle. I've been a creative person my whole life. And so in high school, I did enjoy art. I was in our art club at school. But I think I started to internalize messages that, the way to really help people is to go into something like medicine or law or, something like that. Go really make a big name for yourself and help people that way. There is nothing wrong with that. I will just say that over time, my view on that has changed a little bit and expanded. But I think my intentions and what really drew me into medicine was just that desire to connect with people on a deep level. My father was a physician, and he always kind of put the bug in my ear, you would be a good doctor. He had 3 kids and we were all unique, but he always told me you would really make a good physician. And so when I went into college, I didn't immediately declare a major. I took classes in various things, including art. But eventually I was I'm gonna go pre-med, and then went from there.
Full steam ahead.
Yep.
Full steam ahead. Wow. So, you realize that you're good at a lot of things, and you love learning, you love doing a lot of things. And so your initial interest was I want to learn as much as I can. But then you have this inkling that's telling you, or this voice. The voice was dad. The voice is saying, you'd be good at medicine. You're good at this. And so you decided after a while, okay, I'm going to go into pre-med, and then went full steam ahead into medicine. So as I mentioned, you are a veteran, an Army veteran, and then you did general surgery. However, as time progressed, you decided to put a pause from the clinical practice. So tell us, what happened and what made you decide to put a pause at that point in your life?
Yeah, so that covers like a whole span of years. So I will just say briefly, I not only wanted to be a doctor, but I had it in my mind that I would love to be able to go on the mission field someday. My grandparents were actually career missionaries, and so that was part of the reason that I joined the Army, because I didn't want to have tons and tons of debt. I was also excited to serve my country, and I'm very proud that I was able to serve, and I definitely met some amazing people and had some amazing experiences during my time in the Army. As far as why I chose surgery, going into medical school, it was like kind of the last thing I wanted to do, the last specialty I saw myself in, because everyone knows the stereotypes about surgeons, that they're arrogant and they not very nice, and they're, think they know it all. And I didn't want to be like that. But when I did my surgery rotation, I just kind of fell in love with working with my hands, and that's kind of a common theme throughout my life. Like, it's hard for me to sit and just listen to something or have long conversations about something without being actively doing something with my hands. And so I'm like, I could go into internal medicine or something like that, where we make rounds for like hours and hours. Or how about surgery, where I get to go into the OR and actually like fix a problem? It's very hands-on. And so that's what drew me into surgery. And like you said, I'm board certified in general surgery. Then I went on to actually do a fellowship in burn surgery. And so, that leads me to kind of the thought process that eventually caused me to make the change and bring me to where I am today. So when I had just finished my burn surgery fellowship, and so I was working at a level 1 trauma center, teaching residents, doing something that I had trained for many years to do, and had a husband, had 2 kids, and now a 3rd one on the way. And I think a lot of people looking from the outside would think like, oh, she's got it made. She's living the life, right?
Perfect, right?
She's, got residents under her. I was literally like saving lives on a daily basis just because of the nature of the work we were doing. We were taking care of the sickest of the sick. We had some of the best technology available. But in reality, that was one of the darkest times in my life. My home life was not the happy thing that it probably appeared from the outside. And I eventually found myself in a place where I was trying to figure out how I was going to keep myself and my kids safe. At work, again, on the outside, it probably looked like this great thing. At one point, I was the highest RVU earner in the hospital. And this was a big hospital. I remember they like published that data, and someone showed me like, hey, did you know? And I was like, that was not my goal at all. We were just so overworked. There are some other issues that like, it was not a healthy work environment either. And so as I started thinking about moving forward, I think, one of the things about medical training is it is kind of like you get in this track and then you just keep going. And it's very much ingrained in us, like, put your nose to the grindstone and just, embrace the suck. Like, and so, but at some point, I started thinking, both in my career and in my personal life, like, I have choices to make about what I really want and, what my actions need to be to accomplish that. And so I came to the conclusion that I was going to have to make some changes, and those kind of unfolded over time. But the three key things that I took out of that whole time period were, it's really important to develop first your support system. You know, when I was trying to figure out the best way to provide for my kids and keep them safe, I had to intentionally build a support system. So, you know, another thing about our training as we're going through medical training is it can be very isolating. You don't have time to go out and make friends. You know, you're hopefully reasonable friends with your other people that you're in training with, but it may not be the support system that you really need. You're often isolated from your family.
Yeah, and the one thing you had prior to going in, sometimes you're unable to nurture those relationships, the friends that you had before you started med school, because they're limited. So
exactly. And so I realized the importance of actually building a support system. Like, we can't do this alone, and you need to go out and like figure out what people you need in your life and then be intentional about developing those relationships. The second thing that I realized was important is the habits that we cultivate. So again, like, we can get so busy with work and other responsibilities that we kind of lose track of where all of our time is really going. And so it's important to cultivate habits like exercise. That has been one thing for me that, yes, it's good to like help stay in shape, but really the benefit has been mental for me. I enjoy running. And so I've just noticed, even especially during that really difficult time, like some of my biggest light bulb moments or like creative ideas that would help me come to a solution and something came when I was running, just because like that's when my mind could stop and process things for a minute. But other habits like journaling is a big thing that, again, at the time I would have said, oh, I don't have time for that. But I've come to realize it is so important. You know, we make time to make observations about, like, say, our patients in the hospital, right? We write daily notes on them. When you're doing a study, a scientific study, you take down all this data. Well, what about our own lives? Like, we are the ones that know ourselves best. And if we're just like going on autopilot and we don't take time to actually pay attention and write down our observations and trust our own intuition, I think we end up struggling in places for a lot longer than we would have.
Absolutely.
So that was the second thing I learned. And then finally, the messages that we allow ourselves to believe. And it's funny because just like 2 hours ago before this interview, I started listening to the audiobook of Soundtracks by John Acuff. And that's what his new book is all about. It's about these soundtracks or these thought messages that play in our heads, many of which we don't realize are going on. Whether it's like some of the things for me were, my worth is based on what I produce. Like I mentioned, being the highest RVU earner, and that was like applauded by everyone, right? And so that was something that came to just be what I thought was true because it was always playing in my head. Or rest is not as important as hustle, right? Hustle is like the all important, like hard work is, nothing could be more important than that. And so I began to actually like examine these things, these messages, and I realized that we need to be intentional about these messages as well. And just like saying, are these really true? Is that really helping me? And if not, let's change them to things that are.
Let's change those soundtracks, right?
Yes.
If the soundtrack and the messages are really, they're not reflecting They might reflect where you used to be, but if it's not reflecting where you're going or where you are
Yeah.
now, we have the ability to change those soundtracks. But the first thing is aware is being aware that that's the soundtrack that's playing in your mind, and that's
Yeah.
important.
And
Yeah.
that's part of, I mean, all these things tie together, but that's one of the things I learned about journaling. Like, I'll find myself just kind of having this yucky feeling, but not really being able to identify it. But if I can do some journaling and like write down what I'm thinking, then I can objectively look at that and say, is that really true? Do I need to change my belief about something, or, change the soundtrack in my mind on this topic? And it can make a world of difference.
Absolutely. You're speaking to something that I have discovered within myself too within these last few years. And it makes such a world of difference. All of a sudden you feel lighter and longer object when you're thinking about things objectively. You start to really like, is this really bothering me, or is there something else that's leading me to feel this way? And do I really feel this way, or am I just telling myself this is the way that I should react? There's
Mm-hmm.
so much more that we can realize, and we realize that we're actually in control of our
Yeah.
emotions.
Yeah.
Your emotions are not in control of you, so you can choose the way that you react to something. And if you choose joy, you're just like, that's just so much easier for me. And
Right.
yeah, so that's absolutely wonderful that you're able to get those three big points, especially in that point in your life where it felt like you were at the darkest part of your life and you came out, bringing out like these 3 points. Now, something else special also came through this, which is your business, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
So, yeah, your Words of Hope designs. Tell us how that
yeah.
came into play.
So, kind of part and parcel with discovering how important the messages that we allow to play in our brains is, I started, and just my natural tendency towards creative expression, although I had really kind of just suppressed that and said, like, that's not as important as learning to be a surgeon. I'm not going to spend time on that for, kind of close to a decade. But when I started to be under all this stress, I got back to hand lettering. So this is becoming kind of a more popular thing now. So I think a lot of people know what it is, but it's basically just fancy writing. It's calligraphy is. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Calligraphy, there's kind of like a very defined way that you form the letters. But modern lettering, you can kind of take some artistic license and write them however you want that you think looks good. So anyway, I learned that this was a thing, and I started writing out messages that I wanted myself to remember, because I knew that when you get in that time when you're extremely stressed, you're not just going to automatically remember, like, my voice is important and I have value no matter how much I produce and all these things. And so I was like, okay, when I'm thinking clearly, I'm going to write these things down. I'll put them in a place where I can see them. And then when I need them, they will be there for me. So a couple of years passed, and I moved. The Army moved me to Tennessee, where I still am today. And I was back to doing general surgery. Now a single mom of 3, and it got to the point where it wasn't that I disliked my job. I actually loved the people I worked with. It was a very supportive work environment. I enjoyed operating, but I just had this nagging feeling that, like, my biggest gifts and the things that were most fulfilling to me weren't really being used. And I struggled with that because I think I felt this duty, or like to be the most useful thing I could be, and I had internalized the thought that medicine was kind of the ultimate way to help people, right? But I came to realize that there are many ways to help people. And I read this quote recently that I felt like really just encapsulated my thought process during that time. So it says, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And it's by Harold Whitman.
Yeah, I love it.
And so it took a while to kind of get past this almost guilt over not being like finding this great fulfillment in what I had trained so long for. And to realize, to really allow myself to think outside the box and say, why did I go into medicine? Because I wanted to use my gifts to help people in a meaningful way. What have I learned over the past 10, 15 years? That my gifts are more than just operating. They're encouragement and sharing what I've learned and helping people change their mindset, which could be even more powerful than taking out someone's gallbladder, you know, like, because I would have patients that I took care of, and it would be like, yeah, I fixed your surgical problem, but you can kind of tell that there's something else going on, but I wouldn't have time, or it wasn't really my place to like talk to them about deeper things, but I had that desire to. And so it was kind of just this process of realizing maybe I was made for more, and also giving myself permission to pursue those things that I was good at. So
Absolutely. Wow. Such a powerful journey. Such a powerful journey. And now you have this beautiful business, the Words of Hope Designs. Now, I would love if you could show us just a few of the items that you have there. Yes.
So I have some of these smaller ones that I can show up close. And then, so this one says, good things take time. And this says, small steps every day. And you're doing better than you think. So these
are all phrases. You are so right that we need planted around our home, our office space, in our cars, you know, to remind us. Because you said something powerful earlier. When you're in a good space, then, you know, you're just moving along and you feel well, right? But then you get into the dark space and you get into this point in your life that you're not feeling at your best, but you forget all of those little points that you have on your designs, right?
Yeah.
So you forget that. So having those reminders around you, when you look around and you see these positive statements that lets you know what, that's true. You know, one step at a time. That's important. Yes, because when we are in a space of stress and high anxiety, we go from 0 to 60 in like no time. And we forget that it takes one step at a time, and we can all bring it back. We can handle whatever situation that's there in front of us, and we can be in charge of the way that we feel and the emotions that we use to react to those situations. So I love it. I love it. And I see some beautiful ones behind you, but we're not going to have you break down your entire wall just so that you can show us. Some really, really, really beautiful designs. And I love those phrases that you have that's letting us know. Like, can you post them up again? I love all three of them that you said.
I can only hold two at a time, but
yes, good things takes time. That's right. And small steps every day. These are definitely things that we need to remember. And there's one more that I also love.
You're doing better than you think.
You're doing better than you think. Now that one, you know, that one is, I mean, all three of them are wonderful, but that one I think we usually forget, right? Because we think that we have to make large steps. We have to have overcome huge obstacles, but getting up and deciding to do something and putting your shoes on, You're doing
Right.
better than you think, right? So
Yeah.
even just one step at a time. All righty, wonderful. So now we want to know, what are you doing for self-care? You're putting together this beautiful artistry, beautiful designs of positive words and phrases that's out there to help others. What are you doing for
Yeah.
self-care?
Well, it's interesting because I mean, hand lettering actually started out as my form of self-care, right? And it still is. Like, you know, it can become, there's a fine line between where it's like something I'm enjoying and where I'm like, oh, I'm making a bit like I can't mess up because this one's, you know, something I'm going to be selling. But it still is like I have just journals full of things that I've written out. But other things, like I mentioned, I love to run. I love bubble baths. So I make time for those whenever I can.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. So now here's another thing. If you weren't a doctor, what would you be?
Well, it's probably not too much of a surprise that I would be an artist, but also an author. That's something that, like I said, when I was a little kid, like I would write poems, I wrote stories, like I entered the young authors competitions, and I have ideas and starts of at least 2 or 3 books already. So
What are
it's
the
just
books
a
you're
matter of
working
time.
on? What are those books?
I'm one of them really just about what we've been talking about today and my journey from surgeon to artist. Yeah, and the other two, I don't want to give the secrets away. They're still in the works. So.
I don't want to spoil it. We're not doing any spoiler alerts here for the other two books. We gave away one. I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, with all of this beautiful art and all that you have to offer, where can we find you?
The best place to find me is at www.wordsofhopedesigns.com.
Love, love, love.
Yeah.
And with the Words of Hope designs, are we going to be able to find, because you're an artist and you're producing great art, but these arts are for sale. So, for those
Yeah.
who need to know, because they need to, this information, these beautiful words of hope that are designed by you, that, people can have this around in their offices and their homes, churches, let us know. Are all of these available at that website for sale?
Yeah, so I'm actually this week, and I have an Etsy shop. And so right now, if you go to my website, it'll say, click here to shop my Etsy shop. But I'm getting it so that you'll be able to shop directly from my website. But it's taken a little while. But that reminded me of the other thing that I've been working on, which will be on my website very soon, but it's these little biblical affirmation lunchbox notes. So these are, I have 3 kids, and so 2 of them are in school, and so I pack their lunches all the time. And just, again, realizing how important the things that we think about and the messages that go through our heads are, it's the same for our kids. And so I would write notes to put in their lunch boxes. And I started getting toward the end of my pad that I always wrote on, and I was like, there's got to be a better way. Because, in the mornings, like everything is crazy. I'm trying to make sandwiches and keep the toddler from spilling her juice. And like there's just not a lot of time to think creatively. And so I was like, what if I designed something that was all ready to go? There's a joke on there, there's a biblical affirmation, and then there's a small space to write like love mom, or if you have more time to write a little more. But anyway, just to make things easier, because our kids need those messages too, those affirmations.
Right. Because those messages from childhood, they become the soundtrack when we get a little bit older. So
yeah,
bring in as much positivity and positive affirmation, that absolutely is wonderful. I love it. So those are Show me again. Those are the
Biblical affirmation lunchbox notes.
biblical affirmation lunchbox notes. Love it, love it, love it. And like we said, you can find all of this on your website. Say your website again. It's
www.wordsofhopedesigns.com.
wordsofhopedesigns.com. Thank you so much, Dr. Cranston.
Yeah.
Yes, and you can find this wonderful, wonderful interview on our Your Caring Docs. Our website, it absolutely will be there. And also you'll find it on our YouTube page. And don't forget, today we've talked a lot about self-care, right? And this is one of the things that we want to emphasize, especially in our female professionals. We've just discussed it. Dr. Cranston gave us, a lot of the ways that she was able to deal with her situation and why, and even the 3 points. She said, number one, getting a support system. And that's what we are building here with our Your Caring Docs VIP Youth Society. So do not forget to sign up on our website, www.yourcaringdocs.com. That's URCARINGDOCS.com. That's where we have health and wellness information for our busy professional women to put themselves and their self-care first, even if it's just for 2 hours a month. That's right. We know self-care is important. We know that health and wellness is important. If you are healthy and you are there, then you can be there for all whom you have to help in your support, right? So don't forget to join us on our VIP list. And yes, thank you again, Dr. Joanna Cranston.
Thank you.
Joining us here on our Your Caring Docs Who Cares. Don't forget to leave her a 5-star review and go to her website and you can purchase all of her lovely designs. As you can see, she has some up in the background. Like I said, we're not going to have her break down her walls. So we had her show us a few of her beautiful designs there. Thank you so much for coming and we will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.